we are standing at the second section of the exhibition, where it is about nightmares, I guess. Would you like to explain something a bit about this section specifically?
Yeah. No, it's about nightmares, but it's about the fears that nightmares cause. It's about the anxiety. It's about the condition that that, like the term you said, the precarity that the psyche goes through, the identity goes through, is perfectly, it appears during nightmares. You can understand that. The vulnerability of the identity, like you can understand that when it happens. This section is called the unconscious abyss because unconscious is like an abyss that it is so deep, it's immensely deep that there's no end to it. And we can only tap the surface, we can only scratch the surface and understand what are some of the ways it works. But this section is about those expressions that are really scary, that are also created with an intent of eeriness. The where there's a state of despair,
Right.
there's a state of fear, there's a state of horror, where devilish creatures come out. Nighttime, where again illogical things are manifesting itself into a world that can collapse, or the world of violent desires, or the world of violent fantasies, which is again one of the important postulations of psychoanalysis, that you chase your dream, but the dream, or that you chase your desire, then the desire ends in your perishing. So going back to the Siren's Lullaby, the title itself. So the violent fantasies, the sexual fantasies, the erotic fantasies, the fetishes for certain things, the fetishes that many people have, can all, following that desire completely, can lead to the extinction of the identity. So, and that's what the problem is, that we think that we want to follow our desire, but is that what we actually desire? Because we all know that, like we fall in love, and then the eventual response to that is to also end that act of love, and it always ends in a violent manner too. So where is this? The desire is leading us to a very dangerous, perishable path. And it's not only about death, but it's always about ending something violently.
It's about the loss.
It's about the loss. It's about the areas of grief. So the section of the exhibition is engaging with images, spatial arrangements, or even if you look at Harsha's sculpture, it will appear like something creepy, something like a really illogical shape that will come into your dream, and you can, maybe you will like circle it, you will walk on it, or it will entangle you into something. So I am also looking at all these paintings, artworks, sculptures in this section, not only as artworks, but also as images that can trigger something, or that can speak about the images that appear in your nightmares. For example, Deepa's work, that's also adjacent to Sujit Essence, these two apocalyptic landscapes. And this is again a landscape like which you will usually see in your nightmares, like a barren landscape. There's something ominous going to happen, and these two comets are hitting from the sides to it. And it's already extinct. You can see that it's already extinct, and it's kind of luring you to look into it, but it's again a landscape of death. It's again a barren landscape. And here, as you can see, she has beautifully played with the complexity of images, as I said, with different forms of spatial arrangements, again, if you look at the picture plane is also very different. She has also cleverly played with that. But all of it comes together to create something entirely complex that doesn't have any meaning, and that kind of confuses you, baffles you. And that's what dreams does. That's what desire does. And that's what psychoanalysis helps us to understand, that we are always going to remain baffled by this world.
Right. It complicates the process of meaning we produce and the meanings through which we understand the extended attributions it does to it. I also want to speak about this. From you, there is some sense of sublimity in this section as well. there is a nature of this sublime to all the works through which, this section also is being developed and is being kind of conceived. So do you have anything to say about the sublimity part of these artworks, and particularly bringing them to this section of this exhibition?
It happened with some chats, some planning. The sublimation for me has perfectly worked in many of the scenarios here, especially the atmosphere of the dream.
Right.
The atmosphere of the nightmare has been perfectly captured in all these images. And art, as I said earlier, has been a sublimating element for repression, has been a sublimating element for the violent fantasies that we all share deep inside us. Sometimes we are aware of it, sometimes we are not aware of it, and it manifests itself in different ways. For example, in our classes, I've always given this example that we always play violent video games where we are shooting people, killing people and all, and people are so obsessed with those imageries.
Then we are getting
People
pleasure
playing
out of it.
People are taking pleasure out of it. But are you going to do that in real?
Right.
Are you going to act that out in real? But the pleasure is real. The fantasy for that is real. The desire for that is real. And the only way to sublimate it is via art.
Right.
That you express that culturally in this way so that it also becomes decipherable. It also becomes accessible in some way to express that.
Right.
And this section is also about that. And for me, that's how it has all worked together, because it's all of these individual works speak about a world of desires, fantasies, absence of logic, absence of rationality in it. And it talks about a world that is expanded, filled with what you call possibilities of complexities, possibilities of the complex thing that the dream is. So it's filled with that, and also about perishing, also about falling into the trap of the dream. But the dream world is always not so beautiful. It's always this world that is also lurking beneath the dream world. That is very scary.
Right. Right. But there is a beauty to it.
There is, of course, a beauty to it. Yes, I love this section. The
Yeah.
beauty to it, and that's what but also the tranquility of that experience that you can see in Mehak's work, where the subject is here reclining, the other one is almost like sleeping. But in both, there's a despair, there's a disassociation, there's a deep melancholic resignation that has fallen into it. And it's always, here she is almost on the verge of the sleep, and there she is already collapsed. But the world around us is also spatially, if you look at it, spatially collapsed. It's spatially quite unconventional, it's spatially challenging. And here also the world has collapsed. And the world is also filled with different kind of lights.
Right.
It's not only about colors, but you can see different kind of lights that have entered into the world. So it's not only one light
Exactly.
that is entering into the world. So this is what I was always talking about. There's a complexity of multiple meanings, multiple possibilities that is entering into one image. And she has done that brilliantly. And it's, I think, perfect. Also, like a poster for the exhibition too.
Exactly.
It's like perfect for that too.
Before we go to the final section, I also want you to, since we were talking about it, and that was so interesting, and I want this to be part of this video as well, that we were talking about the pleasure and the pleasure in making, the pleasure in thinking, in engaging with the idea of pleasure in building the artistic subjectivities as well. So would you like to kind of extend that a bit?
No, I would like to, because it's a topic that I've been thinking about a lot lately. That we as a society have a lot of choices in the recent time, that we can express ourselves sexually, we can wear what we like, we can travel, we can choose the vocations we like, we can lead the lifestyle we like. And that's what contemporary capitalism has designed for us, a world filled with choices, where we can be what we can be. But like I said earlier, that are these desires the real desires? Are these the desires that the unconscious want us to have? We think that this is what we desire, but is it actually what we desire? And the problem also is that following that desire always lead to a perishable path. But that is actually pleasure. It's that perishable pathway is the pleasurable pathway. And there's this beautiful Japanese movie, I forgot the director, where this man has an illegitimate affair with a married woman. And they are both are like in the realm of senses. I think that's the title. And they are both are having endless sex. Endless sex. That's the only thing in their mind. And this man kills her husband also. But they are just having sex, sex, sex. But when you're fulfilling desire to that fullest point, what happens is this guy gets killed. And the woman goes almost insane and she just wants the man. It's a brutal sight at the end of the movie. So the fulfillment of fantasy is always leading to a perishable path, but that is a pleasure. Pleasure is not happiness. People misunderstand pleasure with happiness. So that's why like there is always a censorship on happiness. There's always a censorship on pleasure. But the real pleasure is about the path, this dangerous path of desire you are taking. That is also the path of pleasure. But there is no discussion on pleasure these days. What Zizek, I think Zizek is the only philosopher who is talking about pleasure these days. He talks about the idea of jouissance. There's a pure pleasure, the excessive pleasure, the surplus of excess of pleasure. So in that way, we need more discussions about pleasure. We need to understand what pleasure is. Because if you ask me like about the exhibition and everything, but I know putting up, you were there with me, and we have worked together on this exhibition. We know the hard work that has gone into it. It's not a happy thing. You're physically strained. Sometimes you're famished. Sometimes you're dehydrated. But the end of it, when it opens up into this beautifully displayed, conceptually engaging exhibition, that is the pleasure.
Right.
And the journey was the pleasure.
Right.
So this task, this crazy task of undoing yourself, putting yourself at risk to fulfill the desire, is the pleasure. But that is always a lethal task.